Welcome to another episode of Source Selection Soundbites. Today we will address the GSA schedule's interaction with the small business programs. FAR 8.4 says it is exempt from the dictates of FAR 19, the regulatory implementation of the Small Business Act, except for the requirement to assign the proper NAICS codes to orders and bundling and consolidation requirements. This means the agency is not subject to the Rule of Two analysis to determine if the requirements should be set aside when using the authority under FAR 8.4. However, the agency may, at its discretion, set orders aside in accordance with FAR 8.405-5. FAR 19.502-4 confirms this discretion by saying, contracting officers may, at their discretion, set aside orders placed under multiple award contract for any of the small business concerns identified in FAR 19. When reading FAR 8.405-5, one of the first things the CO should notice is that the preference programs of Part 19 are not mandatory. That means the CO is not obligated to set acquisitions aside for 8As, hub zones, service-disabled veteran-owned, and woman-owned small businesses before implementing a general small business set-aside. In addition, the CO should notice that any type of set-aside is totally discretionary for orders and BPAs against multiple award schedules. That means that even if the Rule of Two standard is met, the CO is still not required to set the acquisition aside. This may not be agency protocol or culture, because small business goals need to be met, but this is what the law allows when using FAR 8.4 procedures. Contracting officers need to know the law, because there are situations where they need to deviate from standard practice because it's in the best interests of the agency. The CO's effort to do what is in the best interest of the agency is more difficult if the CO's superiors think FAR 19 processes are applicable when using FAR 8.4 procedures. Once they understand its application is not legally required, they are more likely to support the CO's efforts to do what's in the government's interest if the business case makes sense. Perhaps the most practical way to use this information is to avoid lengthy RFI-based research when the agency is sure small businesses can do the job. In those circumstances, the CO should just go to the schedule and ensure 3 small business vendors can perform the work and do the set-aside. Doing more with less means taking advantage of available efficiencies so the CO can be more productive. Even though the CO may want to support small business, the CO should recognize that compliance with 2 sets of rules is required to complete the transaction. If there is conflict, the FAR 8.4 rules generally govern the transaction. In FAR 19 procedures, the Rule of Two is the test to determine whether an acquisition shall be set aside. In FAR 8.4, the Rule of Two should not be the test utilized to determine if a set-aside is viable, because FAR 8.4 requires the agency to seek competition from at least 3 contractors. Therefore, if there are only 2 small business contractors, do not set the acquisition for the order aside. Since the Rule of Two is not compliant with GSA schedule requirements, the agency should default to the Rule of Three when setting acquisitions aside. This allows the agency to make discretionary set-asides while observing GSA schedule requirements. The GSA.gov website confirms this sentiment. Finally, in accordance with 13 CFR subsection 124.504d.4, when 8A set-asides are done on GSA schedule, the agency is not required to consult the SBA in the follow-on requirement should it prefer a different strategy in the follow-on acquisition. In this episode of Source Selection Soundbites, we discussed the intersection between the GSA schedule and small business program requirements. This concludes today's Source Selection Soundbite. If this video was helpful, hit the like and subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any new material. If you want more details on the subject, they are available on the Source Selection Answer app. It contains lectures, quizzes, court cases, sample documents, and more material that allow practitioners to quickly obtain actionable knowledge. Thanks for watching. See you next time.